Welcome back to In Response EDH. As always, I'm your host Albert, and I'm glad you can join us for another great Commander gameplay video. On today's episode, we have our good friend Baron back, and today he's trying to get another win, this time using my Yarok deck. This deck is filled with creatures with powerful ETBs, and runs spells to bounce those creatures with cards like Essence Flux. Displacer Kitten is an all-star in the deck, and will also allow you to bounce those creatures when you cast a non-creature spell. And my personal favorite target to bounce? Well, that's Agent of Treachery, of course, because if there's one thing I love besides taking extra turns, it's stealing your permanents. Next we have Sam returning, and he's brought one of his commanders that, surprisingly, actually tries to win the game, Orvar the All-Form. This deck relies on his commander's ability to create token copies of his permanents, with a ton of cheap buyback spells like Clock Spinning. Once he makes a ton of copies of a creature like Precursor Golem, if he controls at least 8 copies of the permanent, he wins the game through mechanized production. Jose's up next, and he's decided to bring back Akim, the Soaring Wind. This deck is all about making tokens by casting cheap cantrips on each player's turn with creatures like Monastery Mentor and Talran, Sky Summoner on the field. Once he's amassed a big enough army, he can cast one of his many Anthem effects like Shared Animosity to swing in for huge damage and take us all out. And of course, last but not least, I'll be playing Alela, Artful Provocateur. This is a soft stacks deck that wants to annoy my opponents and keep them from being able to execute their game plans, with cards like Drannith Magistrate to keep everyone casting spells only from their hands, Torpor Orb to keep ETB effects from going off, and Painful Quandary to make it hurt whenever they cast spells. I want to take this time to thank our sponsor, Dragonshield. If you don't know, they have a great card managing app available for both iOS and Android devices. It's amazing for quickly checking card prices, storing your deck list, and managing your collection. Dragonshield has given us 3 premium full-year subscriptions to give away to some of our viewers. All you have to do is leave a comment on this video telling us what cards from March of the Machines you're most excited for. I'll be picking 3 comments at random, and winners will be chosen Friday, April 21st. So good luck, everyone. With that said, and the introductions out of the way, let's start the game. Jose wins the die roll and starts us off playing a Mystic Gate, tapping it for a Soul Ring, then tapping the Soul Ring for a Fellwar Stone. Baron just plays a tapped Overgrown Tomb and passes. Sam plays a Snow-Covered Island and passes. I play an Exotic Orchard and tap it to cast a Soul Ring.
Damn!
Everyone has a fucking Soul Ring? Maybe I should have kept my first hand.
What was your first hand?
No lands and just a Soul Ring.
Craft Digger's Cave.
Okay.
Oh, that's annoying. Actually, hold on. Do I like that?
No, you don't.
Ah, sure.
Jose starts his turn by dropping a mountain, and then tapping the Soul Ring to cast Boros Signet. After that, he spends 4 mana to cast Aven Windguide, and passes. Baron draws and plays a Swamp, and ends his turn. Sam just plays another Snow Island, and passes. I untap and draw, then play an island, and tap my Orchard for white mana to cast Blind Obedience. Jose untaps and draws for turn.
Look, we can't let Albert body us again, okay? This is
The last one was a body. Yes.
Swing out for 2 then?
Yeah, he deserves it.
Next he casts his commander, Akim, the Soaring Wind, which comes in tapped thanks to the Blind Obedience. He then ends his turn. Baron misses his land drop and passes. Sam then just plays another island and passes as well. I then draw for turn and play another island. I then tap 4 mana to cast a Thopter Spy Network. I do pay the mana with the Forbidden Orchard to extort the spell, draining everyone for 1 life and gaining 3. All while Sam keeps threatening to counter my spells.
It's not coming at me, right?
No.
We're cool? Huh?
I think I need blockers.
Because I'm super not cool right now. like I'm just dropping land. I got nothing.
Jose then plays a Battlefield Forge as his land for turn. He then moves to combat and swings Akim at me, and the Wind Guide at Sam. Baron draws.
Oh, thank God.
He then plays an Exotic Orchard. After that, he taps out to cast Risen Reef. As it ETBs, he looks at the top card of his library, but doesn't find a land and puts it into his hand. Sam then draws and drops another island on the field. He then taps out to cast his commander, Orvar the All-Form.
Should be tapped because of the blind obedience.
Blind obedience. Thank you. I start my turn and make a Thopter from the Thopter Spy Network. I then tap 4 mana to cast Coastal Piracy. As I cast it, I pay to extort it, draining the table again and gaining another 3 life. Jose then casts a Kick to protect the negotiators to counter it and make a 1/1 soldier. This will trigger his commander, and he also makes a 1/1 bird token. Jose then starts his turn and taps 2 mana to cast Thrill of Possibility, discarding a card and drawing 2. He then taps 3 mana to cast a Bonder's Ornament that comes in tapped. He then goes to combat, swinging at the whole table. He does miss a land drop and just passes. Baron draws for turn and casts a Soul Ring that comes in tapped. With nothing else, he passes. Sam draws and plays another island. He then taps 4 mana to cast Solemn Simulacrum. As it enters the battlefield, he goes searching for another island to the field tapped. At the beginning of my upkeep, I make another Thopter and then draw for turn. I just skip through my main phase and go straight to combat, swinging a Thopter at Jose and drawing a card from the Spy Network. I don't find a land, but I do find a Rhystic Study. In response, Baron casts Teferi's Time Twist to avoid the tax and bounce the Risen Reef. It gets a counter, but should enter at my end step, but Baron missed that part of the card. He doesn't find a land and just draws a card. Now that Sam has priority, he casts a Swan Song to counter it, and I make a 2/2 bird token. Jose then starts his turn and misses another land drop, but does cast Balmor, Battle Mage Captain. After that, he goes to combat and swings the Wind Guide at me. I just chump block it, and with nothing else, Jose passes. Baron then untaps and draws. He then taps out to cast Yarok the Desecrated. Since it is an elemental, this will trigger the Risen Reef twice, and he finally finds a land and puts it onto the field tapped. He then ends his turn and discards down to 7. Sam draws for turn and casts a Micromancer. As it enters the battlefield, he searches up a 1 mana spell, which will be Whim of Ulrath, and puts it into his hand.
Yeah, I know.
After that, he just ends his turn. I again make another Thopter on my upkeep and draw. I then move straight to combat and swing 1 Thopter each at Sam and Baron. This allows me to draw 2 cards from the Spy Network. I finally find a land and play a Marsh Flats. I crack it, taking 1, and search up a Plains. After that, I pay 4 mana to overload Dam. In response, Jose pays 3 mana and 1 life from the Forge to cast Teferi's Protection. In response to that, Sam makes Jose an offer he can't refuse.
It counters it, and you get 2 treasures.
You're not going to counter the dam.
And I'm going to Fierce Guardianship the Dam.
Wow, the double counter.
What the fuck?
Wow.
Why would you even do that?
Memory lapse on countering my thing.
On the what?
On the one countering this.
Sure.
Memory
Go away.
lapse.
Now he phases out.
Mm-hmm.
The dam didn't even happen. That's fine.
Oh, it didn't?
It didn't happen.
Why not? Oh.
No.
Oh, fuck
You
that.
did it.
No, you
You
did
did
it.
You did it.
I
You
thought that was
fucking
going
did it.
No,
on.
you committed.
This is why we don't jump the guns, fellas.
Okay.
After that misplay, Jose starts his turn by casting Talran, Sky Summoner, which of course comes in tapped. He then moves to combat and swings 2 of his flyers at Sam for 5 damage. Baron then draws and casts a Massacre Worm. As it enters, it will trigger twice, giving all creatures -4/-4, wiping the board, and we all take a big chunk of damage. I of course have to point out that it does come in tap. Baron then goes to combat and swings his elementals at me for 5 damage. And he gains 3 life. On his end step, Sam casts Mystical Tutor and searches up a High Tide to the top of his library. He then moves to his turn, draws the High Tide, untaps, and casts the High Tide to have each of his islands tap for 2 blue mana. He then pays 6 mana to recast his commander, and another 3 to cast Seagate Oracle, floating 1 blue mana. As it enters, he looks at the top 2 cards of his library and puts 1 into his hand and the other on the bottom of his library. He then uses the floating mana to cast Mind Games, targeting the Seagate Oracle, to tap it and make a copy of it with Orvar. When the token enters, he again looks at the top 2 cards and puts one into his hand and the other on the bottom of his library. I then start my turn making another Thopter token and drawing a card. After that, I cast my commander, Alela, Artful Provocateur. I then drop the plains on the field, and after that, I use my 1 floating mana from the Soul Ring to cast Thalia, Heretic Cathar, to have non-basic lands also enter tapped. After that, I end my turn. Jose draws for turn, and then taps out to recast his commander again. After that, he just says go. Baron draws for turn. He then taps out to cast ᴅᴜᴜᴍ. As it enters, he goes searching for 2 lands, those being Command Tower and a Zagoth Triome. He then moves to combat, swinging the Massacre Worm at Jose, Yarok at me, and the Risen Reef at Sam. Sam then starts his turn, casting a Time Stream Navigator, which comes in tapped. After that, he just ends his turn. I make another Thopter token to start my turn, and then draw. I then tap 4 to cast Starlight Spectacular. This will trigger my commander, and I make a fairy token. I then cast a Baleful Strix, drawing a card as it enters, and forgetting to make another fairy with Alela. I then play a Razortide Bridge as my land for turn. I then move to combat, and my Starlight Spectacular triggers. I target the Strix to get +0/+0, and then continue choosing creatures to get pumped up, getting +1/+1 for each creature chosen before it. I then swing Alela at Baron for 7 commander damage, Thalia at Jose for 7, my Thopter at Sam for 5, and I gain 7 life from Alela's lifelink and draw a card. Jose then draws for turn, takes some time to read my Grafdigger's Cage, and just ends his turn, leaving up all his mana. Baron draws his card for turn. He then decides to tap all his mana to cast Craterhoof Behemoth. Sam wants no part of it and fires off a mana drain to counter it, and gets 8 colorless mana on his next main phase.
Yeah, I don't want to die.
Attempt to kill Albert failed.
Baron then just skips combat and ends his turn. Sam draws his card, and then taps 1 to cast Whim of Volrath with buyback, targeting the Seagate Oracle, making a copy of it with his commander.
You know I don't let you win with mechanized production. You know that.
And again, looking at the top 2 cards of his library, putting one into his hand and the other on the bottom of his library. He then recasts it with buyback, this time targeting the Navigator, making a copy of it. He then activates the Time Stream Navigator to put it on the bottom of his library, and take an extra turn since he has the City's Blessing. He then explains that if no one has any interaction, he'll continue the loop, copying the Navigator and taking extra turns, until he finds his mechanized production and enchant an artifact he has in hand, like the Spine of Ishal to destroy a permanence, until he eventually controls 8 copies of it and wins the game. Well, congratulations Sam on finally beating me with mechanized production. You've had some pretty close calls in the past, but can now say you did it. Orvar is a very strong commander. Being able to cast cheap spells with buyback over and over again to make tokens of creatures like the Time Stream Navigator is completely broken. So the commander needs to be stopped early and often to keep it from going off. I think the mana troubles the table had really benefited Sam this game, since we all got off to a pretty slow start. I wasn't able to find enough white or black sources to cast the spells I had in hand, or even my commander until turn 7. I really needed to play her on curve and generate a big token army to pressure the board, but that didn't happen this game. I did have a great answer in hand to what he was doing with Painful Quandary, but I'm sure it would have just gotten countered with his mana drain. That could have left the window open for Baron to land that Craterhoof though. Again, I don't think it would have helped us get out of the loop, since Baron did see me as the biggest threat and wanted to take me out had it resolved. If Baron would have just swung all his creatures at Sam that last turn, he may have been able to save us by forcing Sam to block with all his creatures, since he would have been staring down lethal damage, but who knows. Jose had an explosive start, but that sure didn't last, since he got stuck on 3 lands the entire game. This seems to happen a lot when I see him play Akim. It normally builds a big token army early on in the game, dealing damage as they enter with spells like Impact Tremor or Perforos, but really gets set back after a board wipe. But not hitting your land drops makes it nearly impossible to get back into the game. If you enjoyed this game, consider stopping by our Twitch streams for Salty Tier Tuesdays every Tuesday at 6 PM Pacific Standard Time, and Fridays at 7 Pacific Standard Time for live Commander action. Make sure to like the video and leave a comment, and if you aren't already subscribed, hit the subscribe button. Before we go, we'd like to give a big thank you to our amazing patrons. We are glad to have your support and thankful for each and every one of you. We here at In Response would like to thank you for watching. Please make sure to like and subscribe, and make sure you follow us on our social medias. We also stream every Friday night at 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Thank you for watching. Have an awesome day.